Coming up is another fine product from Word in Your Ear. If you'd like to help, go to patreon.com/wordinyour-ear. For now, on with the show. Well, welcome to another Word Down Your Way, where we talk to people who are about to be appearing in the near future, somewhere very near you. And you'll be delighted to hear that our guest today is old friend of the pod, Danny Baker.
Again.
Hello, Danny. Once
returning like a bad smell, gentlemen. Let me tell you.
Delightful to see you.
Let's talk about live. Where does your live history begin as an audience member? Can you remember the first live show you went to?
Yeah, it was the last one I got. The first one I got a memory of. It's both in the book, and we did film it for the Cradle to Grave series, but we never used it. It was when I saw we went as a family on the Norfolk Broads, and we always saw whatever show was at the ABC in Yarmouth. The very first one we saw, I think 66, was Anita Harris and Jimmy Tarbuck and Ted Rogers was in it and various dancers, and we always had front row seats no matter what. We always had. My man always insisted we go first class, always, whether he had a first class ticket or not on the trains. We always said first class, and if he went to the theatre or the theatre, if we went to see a show, he would front row. Had to get front row always.
Can you remember any of the lines, Jimmy?
Yeah, I do. And again, apologies to anyone who's followed the shows and the books, because they'll know that they'll recite along with me. Famously, we sat in the front row, and my dad, he was very forthright, as I think you know. And Jimmy Tarbuck did an ad lib that he must have done many, many times. Because my dad was bald by the time he was 19. He said going to prison at 19 did it. I'm not sure, that's sure. But anyway, he was in the front row, and Jimmy Tarbuck said, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind moving seats? The light's shining off your head right into my eyes." Right? And he got a big laugh. And my old man, and this is absolutely true, my old man went, "You can fucking go off someone, you know, Tarbuck." That's what he said. Honestly.
Did he have a response to that?
But later on, when Anita Harris, my mum said that as loud and as clear as I just did, and later on when Anita Harris was on, because he was in the front row, he had a hit at the time called the Anniversary Waltz, and she sat on the edge of the stage and said, "I want to find a young man to sing this to," and she pointed to me and said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Danny," and she went, "Well, Dennis, this is going to be." I got the chance to tell Anita Harris that many, many years later. And she, I got her to sign one of her, because I love her song, "We're Going on a Tuppenny Bus Ride." I think it's one of the greatest, happiest singles ever made. And I got her to sign it, and she put to Dennis, she put it on there. And I also told Jimmy Tarbuck. It's true, I did a few things with Jimmy Tarbuck. There's one online at the moment just popped up. Me and Tarbuck and the Millwall team doing New York, New York, in top hat and towels and shorts and socks, right? And I have no memory of that. I genuinely, when somebody sent it to me and said, "Have you seen this on YouTube?" And there we are, start spreading the news. The full Millwall team, Teddy Sheringham and everyone, Terry Erlock, and me, and we've got top hat tails, but football shorts and socks on, and Jimmy Tarbuck's introducing us. I have absolutely no recollection of that at all.
Did it start to become clear when you watched it? Because Mark and I get this occasionally. You get somebody saying, "I was watching you interviewing so and so," and you go, "I never met her."
Never met her. And then suddenly there you are.
And there you are. And slowly it comes back to you.
And yet, gentlemen, you'd think, I mean, with all respect, interviewing someone, yeah, we've interviewed a lot of people. The full Millwall football team in top hat, tails, shorts and socks with Jimmy Tarbuck singing "New York, New York"
would stick in your mind.
You'd think that would be memorable.
Remember that, but no. Yeah. But I did tell Tarbuck that. I said, "My dad," and he said, "You know, you can effing go off someone, you know, Tarbuck." And he went, "Was that your dad?" I said, "You don't remember it." He went, "You don't forget something like that."
Really? Amazing.
Yeah. He said,
That's amazing.
He said, yeah, you don't forget that. He said, that's your dad. I said, yeah, because he immediately went, anyway, the folks, and he went over this side of the stage and got away. So that
was your first. That was your first show. What was your first music show that you went to? Can you remember?
I went to see independently on my own with me and Tommy Hodges. We went to see Johnny Winter at the Albert Hall in 1970.
Wow.
And I did. My head spun around. I did see Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, but my sister and her boyfriend took me, and I think it was at the Oval. But I'd have only been about 10 or 11. Now you think again, like the Millwall thing, that would stand out, but I'm not entirely sure we did. I think. Anyway,
you probably at the age of 10, you probably couldn't see anything. You probably
exactly. And I don't think
it was obscured by greatcoats, you know.
But he bought me the Pious Bird of Good Omen album, you see, and that's what started me on life's work. But my sister said, "Do you remember we took you to see it?" And again, I'd remember. I think we can agree. I've got a pretty good memory. Yeah. I don't think things are sliding away, but it's that sort of thing. I cannot confirm, but I know me and Tom went to see Johnny Winter and.
So Johnny Winter and so is that with Rick Derringer?
Yes, it's Rick Derringer. Yeah. Absolutely.
So your first kind of live rock and roll show is the least likely looking rock and roll star ever, isn't it?
It was
like a giant bird, didn't he?
Johnny Winter was into the horse and selling out to rock and roll and playing Johnny Be Good and Great Balls of Fire, and I loved it. I was so disappointed in the subsequent live album that came out a year later. But technically, the first group I saw was the support band, who was Keef Hartley. Keef Hartley, not even on the same label, was the
Keef Hartley's half-breed.
Half-breed. They're very, very good at the album.
Miller Anderson was the singer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Of course it was.
I saw Keef Hartley around that same time.
It was what was it? The Battle of Northwest 5 was one of his albums as well.
Keef Hartley famously, in one of his albums, it might even be Half-Breed, the opening track is a recorded phone message of John Mayall firing him.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes. That's right. It is. Yes, that's right.
What a glorious start.
There'll be a legal action now.
One of the very you can't do that anymore. Machines, and he does it on that. And of course, the other thing that's about Hartley, while we're here and live performance, the Keef Hartley band arrived to do an American tour, and they were taken straight to Woodstock, where they played. But when they brought a contract round saying we're filming it, their manager said, no, you're not. And he refused to let them be in the film. Obviously having no idea. They got there and they were virtually rushed on stage, and their manager said, no, we're not doing it, boys.
Well,
they're at Woodstock, but they're not. There's no footage of them.
It was Creedence Clearwater Revival did the same thing, didn't they?
There is film of them and the Grateful Dead and the band all played Woodstock, but didn't allow the footage to
be. If you're not in the film, you didn't play it.
The Incredible String Band was so terrible they never used them, but they did film it.
So
did you get their careers?
Did you get them to go to live?
Jimmy Tarbuck and Anita Harris were cut out as well. But
so post Johnny Winter, you become a regular at going to gigs. So
there was I saw. Incredibly. So we're talking 1970. I'm 13. 70, 71, I saw the band at the Albert Hall. My mate Tom was really the leader there. He always knew a lot more than anyone. And he had an elder brother who was very hip. My brother liked heavy, So I saw, for instance, Black Sabbath during the 3-day week. And when you had to get your newspaper to see if Knightsbridge had power.
Like candles, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got the paper, I don't remember the evening news, and it told you what boroughs would be cut when, so you think, okay. Yeah. And we looked, and Knightsbridge was in the clear, so off we went to the Albert Hall, and Sabbath came on, and boom, boom, out went the lights, about 2 songs in. And everyone booed, and the Albert Hall was in complete darkness. Anyone who, and this is not a false memory, Sabbath went off and everyone was booing and not knowing what to do in those days before emergency lighting or stewards would have taken you out. And everyone sat there slow hand clapping, and slow hand clap has disappeared. Nobody does. At football matches, nobody does a slow hand clap anymore.
No, that's true.
It used to be a very, very, very powerful thing from an audience, the slow hand clap. So we're all doing that. And then emerging from the back of the stage came Black Sabbath holding hurricane lamps. I am not joking here, right? And roadies with torches. and they all sat on the edge of the stage. Again, going back to Anita Harris, they sat on the edge of the stage and cupping his hands around his mouth, as he said, "We're going to do what we can." And they played with acoustic guitars, right? And just a Millwall banging on the stage. It was lovely. It was like community singing, and we were quite high up. But about 20 minutes into that, the lights came back on, big cheer, and they carried on. Now, that is not a false memory. I think I'm one of the few people who saw Black Sabbath unplugged.
Unplugged. Acoustic set in the middle.
The lights went out, the Albert Horn Sabbath was on. So, I used to go to see lots of groups.
Talking of legendary nights, you weren't at Frank Zappa at the Rainbow, were you, when he went off the
Famously,
stage?
Again, I had tickets for that. And there were two shows. There was an early show and a late show. And we made out, and it was a long way to go from Bermondsey over to Highbury. And it was a change in trains, and it was a real bugger. And anyway, so there were two shows, and nobody wanted tickets for the first show. Why would you? And we, some of my mates got it. And again, me and Tom and a few others, we had the late show. And I adored that lineup of the band. It's not aged well, but I love that version of the Mothers with, Fillmore album and Just Another Man from LA. And I was thrilled. It was about this time of year, I think. Anyway,
yes, it was.
When we got out the station, we saw the crowds flooding towards us and saying, "It's cancelled, it's not on." And we were like, "Oh yeah." And people were going, "Turn back, he's not playing." And it became kind of uniform. We thought, well, this is a pretty well organised practical joke if it is one. And when we got to the thing, that everyone was outside saying, "No, he's been injured. He got through off the stage." People were, because they saw it. And there was a chalkboard on an easel, or certainly, and it said, "Second show cancelled. Cochise are playing if you want to come in."
Cochise!
Cochise!
That's
a dear old Cochise. They said,
well, slightly poor substitute.
I don't know how many people walked in and said, "Oh, well, at least you can see Cochise," because they were the label mates on United Artists. And
Zappa never forgave this country, did he?
He didn't.
For that
Quite
guy.
right.
I don't blame him, really.
Because he was in hospital a long time. He broke his leg. Broke ribs, didn't he?
And that was just after all that stuff at the Albert Hall where he had to go to court and they wouldn't let him play.
Well, he was just after the fire in Montreux as well.
It was.
Of course.
They escaped with their lives from that.
Yeah.
2 years in bed, Zappa, after that, because the irate boyfriend, people who don't know, I'm sure you all do, an irate boyfriend ran on to the stage. It's actually, strangely, they released a box set about 2 months ago, Zappa 71, because he recorded all his concerts, didn't he? And it's every gig he played in 1971 on this huge box set. And the Rainbow is on there. And at the end of it, you can hear it happen.
Oh, no.
It's actually quite chilling.
I bet it is.
He's standing there saying, "Thank you very much. Love you, London. You know, all of this. We'll see you all another time." And then the audience is still sort of going, "More, more, more." And you hear that noise, you know, when guitarists used to unplug it. You hear a bit of that. And then you hear a really loud noise and the audience just stop. And that's where the recording fades out. And it's right at the end of it. And it actually is real goosebumps.
That's amazing. He fell onto concrete, didn't he?
Oh, God.
11 feet into the orchestra pit, it broke his pelvis, his leg. When I interviewed Zappa, I said, I told him that story. I said, I said, 9 tickets. And as I was making my way to it, well, halfway through the story, I could see his face was like, "Thanks for reminding me of that." You know?
It's a dramatic memory.
And there was a ball with Cochise written on it, and his face, it was like, "Okay, well, that's a great memory for me. Thanks for that."
So, have you ever had, in your live performing experience? Because you've taken to live performing in the last 7 or 8 years.
It's 60. Very briefly, I was supposed to promote the first book at an event of theatre over in the King's Road, and they said, you can buy a ticket for 20 quid and you get the book as well and all of that, like they do. And it sold out really quickly. And you might have some sympathy here. And so I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. Sure, I'll do that. Never had the slightest wish to do anything like that. As you know, I've written for every comedian. Never wanted to walk out on a stage and do it. Didn't think I had the chops or just had no desire. Anyway, I went and did this thing. And this is where you'll sympathise. And this person who was interviewing me said, "Man, asked me a question. I stood up and sat down 90 minutes later." And it went really well.
That's good.
And they said, would you do more of these? And that one day became 5, 10, 20. And we did nearly 50 something on that first tour. Suddenly I'm touring. And, and by the end of that first show, though, which was over 3 hours long, I hadn't left school in the narrative of it. I was still leaving school.
Because the first one, Cradle to the Stage.
Cradle to Stage.
That was kind of early years. And then there was Good Time Charlie's Back, which was
Good Time Charlie's Back, which was
middle period.
So
what are you doing? The new one is At Last the Sausage Sandwich Tour. So what kind of period of your life are you dealing with?
It kind of picks up, because the last one is when I go into radio, right? Which was, I've been doing telly nearly 10 years before I started radio. So the last one ended on that. And I kind of teased, this is before COVID and all that. And at the end of it, because I had the screen with photos behind me, although sometimes we use them, sometimes we don't. And I said, Nat, taking this job in radio for 60 quid at GLR, and I'd never done radio before. I said, yeah, okay, because I was skinned and I would do that. I said, and that led on to things like this, and there was a photo of me in the Stones, led on to things like this, and really teased the audience, and said, but, when we meet again, we'll bring it up to date. Although they're not chronological, and they're mainly about my old man. It's like having this conversation.
He is the stars.
Anita Harris and all that. I was talking about him yesterday, funny enough, to a fellow I was selling some records to. He and that is still happening, everyone. The great auction is coming, and we've got to move. Anyway, he and he's talking, because he's from the same part of the world, and we got onto it, and this also will be in the third one. My old man's last months, which sounds very he was very, very stoic, to say the least. And I've got a recording of him I found that I'm going to play him. But I only reminded this yesterday when he came round once and he looked really yellow. The old man, he used to come round and walk the dog. He was really yellow. And I said, Dad, you're yellow. And he said, I know, I don't feel rough. And I said, but you're yellow. But no, George down the butcher's said it, right? So I said, yeah, well, that's all right. I said, have you been to doctors? He went, no. Well, I'm all right. It's a flu or something. He said, I might have a bit of jaundice. Or he wouldn't go to doctors, my old man. Never would. Always robust. But he'd never go to doctors. And he said, and when he come back, I said, you feel? He said, no, I'm not. Well, I said, well, go to doctors, Dad. I said, he used to have a doctor years ago, but only because he was a great tipster, right? He used to go and see Dr. Barry.
The doctor was a tipster.
He was a terrific tipster, and he's also very handy at all the claims my old man had in the dock. He could give him a bottle of brandy and he'd say, yeah, he broke his leg because that his brake on. Anyway, this is all in the shows. Yeah. So, and it's absolutely true, and it's only when I was telling it yesterday. So he said, I'll call it the Knoxes on the way back. I won't go doctor. I'll call it now Knoxes was the Undertakers, right, round our way, right? Old man Knox was the Undertaker. I said, I thought his humour was turning typically dark there. I said, oh, don't say that, Dad. He went, no, I'll go in there because I'll ask him about it. I said, he's not a doctor, Dad. He went, no, but he's in that line, isn't he? What does that mean? He's in that line. Because he was a friend of his from the pub and the betting shop. And he's
got a tube of Germaline.
Well, he's seen a lot of very ill people, to be honest.
But he's in that line, isn't he? Anyway, but that was the first indications he was on his way out. But he wouldn't have made a good old person, the old man, even though he was 78 when he died. But he was never quite like that.
So do you ever do any greatest hits? Because you could, I kind of think you've got these stories that you've done, and things like the pith helmet full of Savalon.
Oh well, yeah.
There are stories that people just want to be like being in a band. They just want to hear those old stories.
It's strange you should say that, because I'm doing the first two tours for 2 nights in January in Blackheath, because I'm walk home from the gig I can walk home from. Why not? So I'm doing Good Time Charlie's Back and Cradle to Stage again, although I've got to remember them, they are nearly 4 hours. Yeah. So we're doing them in the end of January, and then we've got this new one, so that's like 12 hours of material nearly. And I've always said, this is it, that's it then, and I mean that now. Can't keep kicking your legs up. It's about time we had that. Life had its third act and all that, which is why the exodus of even the vinyl. I'll tell you a strange about the vinyl. He's a mate of mine, I said I'd put some good pieces his way, and I did. But I didn't want to go through the racks while I was in there. How about that?
It's gone. It's just gone.
He said, "Do you want to go and look through stuff?" And I said, "No, I have absolutely no interest in stuff."
You're no longer shackled to the lunatic.
Exactly, that's the phrase.
On your back,
unchained from it, and I really didn't. So, but the point is, he said, "Is this your last one?" I said, "Yeah," and he said pretty much what you said there, because seen the Shepherd's Bush Empire and places. And he said, I'd love to hear some of them again. So I might, don't run away, I might give it 18 months and then do one last thing called Any Last Requests. And literally, someone said, tell the story of my old man with a funeral. I might do any last requests.
That's a good idea.
You should have a wheel of fortune like Elvis Costello had with the Savoy.
Like Elvis did. But I've got no. It always sounds, people always say, "Oh yeah, come on." When you say there's no form to it and no script, anyone who's seen the nights know there isn't, which is why they spread and they stretch and all of that. But equally, I don't do any preparation either, which always frightens the life out of everyone involved. The very first night we did it, even Wendy, my agent, said, "Are you not going to make any notes or anything?" And I said, "Well, I've got the photos. It's like radio. I'm going to walk out there. I better have something to say." Hadn't I?
When you did radio, I remember I used to be on the old radio program with you, and I was very impressed by the amount of CDs you took in to do the program, because you thought, it's got to be there. If I feel like playing it, it has to be there.
Could go in that direction.
What eventually, thank God, got recognised or certainly labelled a style was no style at all. It's because they paid so little money at GLR. They couldn't wield any corporate muscle. So from the beginning, I'd never listened to radio. I didn't know. I'd never listened to Peel or Kenny Everett or anyone. Two-way family favourites in our house. Otherwise, we played records. And I thought you just went in with a big box of records and made a show up.
Yeah.
And that became kind of,
well, you did.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. But it don't work for everyone. I mean, God knows. I wish I could be more organised. And someone like Chris Evans or even Chris Morris had to know exactly what was coming next. Well, fortunately, I stumbled into that style, which has now lapsed over into the shows. Because if I walk out there and something has happened earlier on that day, or a thought occurs, then away you go. And I hope, let's not be coy here, it's gelled into a really terrifically satisfying thing.
And substantial too, isn't it? I mean, the last ones were a comparison to Ken Dodd and Bruce Springsteen in terms of the length.
I hope they justify it. God knows I've seen hour-long shows that make you look at your watch, but nobody leaves. They are. Say, I hope everything earns its place. It's just the sheer. I am 66 next, and just before we recorded this, I was up these other two dates. 60-something dates already, and I won't say where, but I'd say no, because I can't do the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd consecutively. No, you can't. You can't. You've really got to watch out, because otherwise you go like Tommy Cooper. You have to factor that in. But that said, the ham in me is so strong.
I was going to say, you love it though, Danny.
I do love it.
When you go on stage and you get that opening kind of applause. I absolutely love it, but I also don't. I like the lifestyle in a different way from other comics who try to book into cheaper places to save money. I don't. Me and the people I travel with, we stay in very nice.
You sit around blazing fires with fine wines.
We do, and that's the great thing. And of course, I carry on. You can imagine, I carry on about another hour and a half after
Absolutely.
I know you always said that you used to do it in the van on the way up. You'd be driving up to the gig, and you'd still be singing, and you'd just be on some riff. I couldn't believe it.
I do enjoy it, but I in a career that I always insist we call uneven, I know when there's good work, and these are good work. There are a tremendous amount of fun.
So you're starting at Blackheath in as you said in January, and then the dates I've got in front of me goes through to the end of March.
Mine goes
May, isn't it? I thought it was 49 dates.
I ran out of paper when I was printing out.
We just added Scotland, Aberdeen and Glasgow and Edinburgh. The thing is, people used to say,
Scotland?
He's a Londoner. Yeah, I've done them before. I mean,
right.
People say, he's London. The dates are literally from Aberdeen down to the Isle of Wight. If you go DannyBakerStore.com, they're all there and you can buy the tickets there. Yeah. But people always think, it's, he's a southern. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know why people say that. It's like saying, Billy Connolly, not that I'm comparing myself to Billy Connolly, but he couldn't travel outside of Glasgow, or, Peter Kay's a northern comedian. It don't work like that. There's some universals that are kick into play during that. But Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh we did last time. Just fantastic. Newcastle's virtually gone as a date. It's first time in Middlesbrough and things like that.
Well, so Danny Baker will be down your way starting in the new year. That's, hat tip to Franklin Engelman there for that's one for the teenagers. And we can't let you go without just mentioning the latest that on the situation that's concerning the nation, which is, are you really letting go of all your records?
Well, as I hinted at a few times there, and I said a few pieces I took up to a friend of mine who runs a record shop yesterday. Yes, yes, they are. As you used the phrase, unchained from a lunatic. Something happened on my 65th birthday. No, don't Damascene moment, but I'm not feeling it no more, as Van Morrison once saying. They're all here. We live in this.
Chewing gum's lost its flavour.
There is that, and also to say, I've always thought life should have a third act. I often say that, and it's about time. I mean, God knows, you have to realise, 15 years, you're 80, as I am. Yeah. And people say, but it gives you great comfort, the records. It's too many. I've got 14,000 albums, and God knows how many singles. And we're moving somewhere else. I'm not going to take all them with us. I don't know they're great, they're beautiful, but the decades and decades I've had of walking around with friends of mine in my record room, getting in the golf buggy and driving down the road. I've done all that. How many times do I actually go there and take down albums and play them? I'll keep a rump, and I mean about 150.
Yeah, there must be some you couldn't bear to say.
Oh, we shall all be interested to learn what are the 150 that you hang on.
Yeah. Number one will be Graham Nash's Songs for Beginners. That will be taken down.
Right.
But there's some that's worth a great deal of money, and there's some that are not. Most of them are. But the ones that I'm going to keep, things like Loggins and Messina's first two albums, stuff like that. I know.
You're the last defender of Loggins and Messina.
Anything that has to
out
do
of 14,000 albums, that's one of
the... They're beautiful albums. They're live album, which is, I know it's cockball and all that, but Loggins and Messina's live album, I think it's just called Live, their double live album that came out in 73. Another time, gentlemen, we'll get into this. I own Barbra Streisand's copy of that.
Obviously.
I was in Florida.
I want to know how that happened.
I went into a thrift shop in Florida. Well, not a thrift shop I'm talking about. There's a memorabilia shop within the Disney grounds in Florida. And they occasionally do I bought Ben Hecht's copy of the front page. Anyway, I know. And there was Barbra Streisand's record with a provenance letter. They'd picked them up. This was in the late 80s, so I suppose when CDs were coming in, she got rid of a load of her records. None of them were notable. None of them are signed by Barbra Streisand, but it's a very reputable shop. And I went through them, and there it is, this copy of Loggins and Messina. I thought, I'll have that. And even though there's no provenance...
It's a story to tell, isn't
it? There was a very MOR bunch of records in that. I wish I'd bought, because it was there, her own copy of Stony End.
Oh. That's a good record.
It's a great record. But I bought Loggins and Messina double live album, and people are just going to have to believe me when I make the outrageous claim that this once was on Barbra Streisand's turntable.
Well, we'll look forward to learning what are the 150 that you've
we'll do one of these. We'll do one of these.
We'll do one of these on that very subject. Danny, it's been lovely to talk to you.
Always, gentlemen.
And, as we always used to say on Whistle Test, good luck with the tour.
Good luck with the tour. Come back and tell us all about it. There's a warm cushion on the settee.
It will come around, won't you? Let me get into my dressing gown and put my muffler on, and I'll welcome you in. Fridge full of champagne, that sort of thing.
Yeah.